The federal government under President Goodluck Jonathan designed the transformation agenda, a summary of how his administration hopes to deliver projects, programs, and key priority policies for the benefit of Nigerians. This week's edition of the program looks at how the government has delivered on this promise, and my guest is the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Hello there, welcome to the program this week. I'm Gloria Umezuike. The Office of the Secretary of the Government of the Federation is mandated to monitor and coordinate the implementation of government policies and programs. Well, this week on the program, we take a look at the anchor of the present administration's program for Nigerians, the transformation agenda. But up ahead, one of the policies of the present administration is the mother and child health component of the Subsidy Reinvestment and Empowerment Program. We now examine the impact of the project in Kiyi community in the Federal Capital Territory. The culture of settling down at a tender age, the quest to deliver a male child at any cost, or the fear of seeking proper medical attention common among rural women has largely been responsible for thousands of maternal mortality in the country for decades. These experiences, which are common in Nigeria, where just 35% of births are attended by a skilled health professional, and 1 in 18 women die in pregnancy or childbirth, according to World Health Organization and United Nations Children's Fund statistics. Again, half of Nigeria's maternal deaths are owing to postpartum hemorrhaging, which unskilled health workers lack the know-how or equipment to stop. Mrs. Victoria Akinrolabu from the Kiyi Primary Health Center, located in Kwali Area Council, explains how drastic the situation has become in the rural communities.
You know, majority of them, they are not quite literate. So they will say they are going to take the delivery of their wives themselves, that after all, they were the ones that delivered the husband, and there was no problem. But they have forgotten that things have changed. We have to change with time. So they still don't allow those pregnant women to go and deliver at the health facility. At times, they may allow them to go for antenatal clinic. But when it is time for them to deliver, they will not come. Even with our village health workers that moves around paying a home visit, they will still hide them. Even when we have like multiple pregnancy and the midwife, we want to refer that patient to go and deliver at the general hospital, they will say they are not going.
She applauded the authorities for the deployment of an additional 100 ambulances, which are critical to responding to emergencies in some remote areas. Chairman of the Subsidy Reinvestment and Empowerment Program, retired General Martin Luther Agwai, is however confident that this first phase of the 4-year project has yielded immense gains to thousands of women in the communities.
The most critical period is that first 1 hour after a woman is given birth. If she cannot get help, it becomes crucial. And that is where we lose some of our children, and the mothers either die or develop complications. So with these ambulances, we have our setup in cluster. Each of the referral center is there. If there is a problem, they will call the referral center. The referral center will send the ambulance to go with some health workers. If they can assist on the spot, they do it. If they can, or they can even pick the lady, as they are taking her, they will give her some help before she reaches the referral center, where you have more facilities and more qualified people to deal with her. So what am I saying? We are going to have less mortality rate.
2 years ago, the maternal mortality is about 545 to 800 per 100,000 live births. Deaths is recorded. 800 deaths per 100,000 live births. 545. But with the intervention we put in place, we'll be able to reduce it to about 350 deaths per 100,000 live births. So a lot of progress. But for us, that is not enough because we have zero tolerance for maternal mortality. Pregnancy is not a disease. Pregnancy is a thing of joy, and it is wrought into happiness and joy. But unfortunately, due to high mortality, a lot of women die. So we have zero tolerance for maternal mortality. And we want to go beyond the 350 deaths per 100,000 live births to zero. It's almost impossible to make it zero, but we want to attain the MDG goal.
With an average of 5.5 births per woman, West Africa has the world's highest fertility rates, which puts women at greater risk of dying in birth, according to UNICEF. Many Nigerian women, particularly in the conservative north, give birth in their teenage years. But reducing early pregnancy can be tough, given women's disadvantaged social position, according to UNICEF's latest State of the World's Children's Report. Well, joining me now is Senator Pius Anyim. Senator Pius Anyim, you're welcome to the program. So let's begin with an overview of the President's transformation agenda. This present administration has tackled so many issues. What would you say is a major milestone that he has achieved so far?
The whole idea of transformation agenda is actually to refocus the political economy of the country for a more sustainable, future developments. And I can say for sure that many people are yet to appreciate the work that is being done.
Are yet to?
Yes. And maybe that is why at times people will still ask the kind of question you're asking now. Let me take, for instance, when we came on, I think the first thing that struck the president was that many projects were conceived without planning. You see a situation where a contract for a road is awarded without a design on the road. And it cut across virtually all sectors. So the first thing the president had to do is to redesign the whole idea by which a project is conceived. And he insisted that there must be detailed planning in terms of the design of the project, planning in terms of the funding of the project, planning in terms of the systematic execution of the project. And this created a foundation where you will never at any time have an abandoned project. So if you look at generally what we have started and what we have done so far, there is no likelihood of abandoned project at any point in any sector. And arising from this, I think the president also realized the fact that, look, there are certain areas you must have a major breakthrough to give a foundation to the development you want to achieve in that sector. Take, for instance, power. He did realize that except you privatize power, if you don't conclude that privatization, there is little you're going to do to achieve a sustainable development in the sector. And for the first time in the country, we were able to break through in this, and today the power sector had been deeply privatized. And now you are talking about, just like what happened in the telecom sector, that in the nearest future, it will be a market for all, that you can certainly have the product and pay for it and enjoy it. So generally the main thrust of the transformation agenda is actually to have a detailed program of service delivery that will not fail at any time. It is intended to live far beyond the lifespan of this administration. In other words, it's not simply politicking with anything that he feels is critical to the economic well-being of this country. And this is across all sectors. If you look deep down, you will see this signature in every policy we have introduced.
But you see, even if he has achieved much in some areas, the main thing right now is security, which many people say the government has failed the people. And this was part of his major transformation agenda. What really went wrong in this regard?
Well, I usually try again to take people back to where we are coming from. And I can tell you for sure, if you look back, I started with this democratic process in 1999. As the nation warmed up to embrace democracy from 98, 99, you find out, up to the campaign, you find out that the crime rate got quite low, quite low. Everybody was holding so much, expecting so much from democracy. And eventually democracy came. It was much later, it started to rise, it started to rise, it started to rise. And by the time good luck was coming in, obviously you have incidences in the Niger Delta region that was of monumental scale that even the international community got attracted to it. In fact, it was such a serious matter.
That's a surprise, really.
Yeah. Then eventually the issue of kidnapping and all that, of course the religious riot started. Just take time to see the sequence as it developed. But at what point did good luck came into it? I mean the president. And you'll find out that by the time he assumed office, the whole insecurity in the country has assumed a dimension that has become more technical than anybody could appreciate or understand at the time. Now, what needed to be done eventually was, of course, you know that the issue of Boko Haram had started before he came. What needed to be done eventually is exactly what he had done in other sectors, to again pull back. And when he pulled back to look at the security sector, he discovered that over how many years there hadn't been any investment in the defense sector. The military had gone quite down, quite low. There had not been any major investment, nothing. Then on the other hand, the security situation that confronted us actually is such that there had not been any of such before. I mean, the insurgents we are now witnessing in the Northeast. The kind of insecurity had grown from one stage to another stage in different dimensions up to the type we now have in the Northeast. Now, what do you need to do? You have to develop entirely a new architecture to confront the kind of insurgency we have. It's not a combat kind of where you see the enemy you are fighting and you warm up and plan for it. This is a situation where people are, you don't know, your enemies, the people you are fighting are not combatants like in the regular warfare. So what the president had done over time was also to plan for a sustainable solution, a solution that will serve for now, sustained for tomorrow, and ultimately eliminate that kind of situation.
Which is that?
Of course, he had to replan the procurement in the defense sector. He had to train the manpower that is required to confront the kind of situation we have. He also had to reach out to other countries to have a new arrangement that will generate support even beyond our borders.
These are things that would, of course, demand urgent attention, of course. So training has always been there over the years, and then even seeking for international collaboration, that could have been sorted out within 1 or 2 years.
Training for the kind of situation we have had not been. And now people had to be trained to confront the kind of situation we have.
Well, he had several years to do that. How come up till...
Terrorism is a new phenomenon. And the kind of training we have been doing and we have had in the military, and like I said, is a situation that we never had the architecture for. And now he had to train for terror. And terrorists are not just like regular combatants. There are people that will attack hard targets and soft targets. And there are people that can be ordinary like you and I, but carrying dangerous weapons. So it's really not what the military was structured for before now. Even at that, the pattern they had worked on, they had gone quite down. You needed to build them up that way. You needed to retrain them for terror.
Well, power also is another promise the government sort of failed to deliver to the people.
Power?
Yes.
This is surprising. One, we are no longer so concerned about what people think, but I know that in practical terms, we have upscaled. We have gone quite high at a time when the privatization was concluded. And you must expect that between the time of government handing over to the private sector, that there will be a little gap. And until the private sector now picks up solidly, then certainly there may be, certainly there must be a little gap. But I tell you something, today when you talk about the telecom sector, you know, you no longer talk about government. And our expectation is that in the next few years, when you talk about the power sector, you will no longer talk about government. You talk about the companies responsible for whichever part of the country that are covering.
We're still with Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator Pius Anyim. We'll come back with more issues on the nation. Please join us again.